Okay. Na 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 na. My memory is sold. My memory. Oh fuck! I don't know how it goes, but welcome to the Sunday Prescription. Dangerfield Sunday Prescription, of course. And what a day it is. I'm very, very happy. Last week I was telling you all about the gig I had coming. How did it go? Were you there? It was excellent. I had I'm not allowed to say that, I suppose. Of course I am. It was great. I had a nice full house. I had a lot of friends there. I had a couple of stalkers, some weirdos, freaks, pimps, gutter snipes, and jackasses. What a crowd, man. They were good. They laughed. I had the wave of laughter thing. This is what all comedians want. This is when you get a laugh, but then there's another laugh on top of that. And it's like it builds and builds and there's like a second wave, and it's why you do it. That's why you stand up. You can say, I'm a comedian because I got something to say. You don't have to be American to have something to say. You can be English to have something to say. You can be Français to parler something to say. Hello, commander, with the bigger boobies. Okay, it's not a good start, but it's not a bad start. It's a bit hectic, isn't it? Ambiance Watch, this week's Ambiance Watch. The window is open. We are officially in spring. And with fresh air comes unfresh noise. But, you know, this is what, there you go. On cue, Harley Davidson goes round the corner with a man from another time sitting on it, smiling as the pollution turns his white face grey. So anyway, the gig went well happy about that. It was nice because when I'd done Sex with Children in Edinburgh, I hope no one overheard that sentence, but when I'd done Sex with Children at the Edinburgh Festival, I had a 50-minute show, and this show was just mine. No compare, no support act, I don't need all that shit. I had Harry Deansway introduce me, and he said some lovely things. He said that I was a comedy genius, and that they've been trying to get me in the venue for years, and that I was a standout act. And he said all the things I asked him to say perfectly. And then I just went on, but I had time, so there was a lot of improvisation, and, you know, I think I'm just telling you how good I am and how excellent I was, which you're not going to listen to too much of that, are you? So anyway, here we are, the Sunday Prescription, on what I think is Sunday the 12th of April. How are you? How's your week been? This is surely more about you than me, isn't it? No, obviously not. That would be ridiculous. It's about us. It's about humanity. It's about people. I am gibbering, but I'm not deleting. No. I'm going to stick a bit of sellotape over the delete button. Never doing it. Unedited. Fresh. Free. Radical. Objectionable. Unnecessary. Now it's just words. But what is a podcast if it's not just words? Well, I'll tell you what it is. It's words and fucking meanings. That's semiotics. That's Ferdinand de Saussure, General Course in Linguistics, where we find that language is made up of two parts, the signifier and the signified. And to misunderstand that is to misunderstand everything. Okay? Everything. What else has been happening? What's the news? I'm sure I had something. I've got a book of notes here, but when I look at it, when I'm actually recording the podcast, it just says, oh, I know what happened. I know what was good. The mighty Arsenal, you know, the Arsenal, they won 4-1, but I didn't go. I was prepping for the gig. I had a lot of shit to sort out. I hadn't performed it in a few months. I'm back to the gig. I was excellent. I was so good. It was great. It was so good. It was great. I didn't go to the match, and I didn't use my season ticket. But there's a funny story. There's an interesting story. So let's just calm it down a bit. Let's remember it's Sunday afternoon, Sunday morning, Sunday evening. Maybe Monday, maybe Tuesday. It could be Tuesday. Let's just chill out a bit. If you got a tea, I've got a cup of tea. Are you sitting back? Yeah. Are you Piers? Bloke called Piers Simmons. He told me he listens to me on his way to work. Are you there, Piers? This is Chris. Can I hear you? That's right. I heard you. Enjoy your drive to work. It's a pleasure to contribute. But the rest of you, have you got a tea? Not that Piers doesn't have a cup of tea. I've seen these modern vehicles with their fancy drink racks. I know what goes on in the car or the van these days. Okay, put your feet up. Grabbing some water myself. Not tea. I can't glug back tea. Right. So, I've become a millionaire, yeah? It happened almost by accident. I did work my bollocks off, but suddenly I had millions of pounds. And so it was time to spend millions of pounds. And one of the things was I wanted an Arsenal season ticket, yeah? I got into the football quite late in life, yeah? I was quite busy out of my mind at college and shit for years, but I got into the football and I wanted a season ticket. And I thought, I'll get an Arsenal season ticket. Now I've got a few quid. I've got a bit of filthy lucre. My friend's son's called Lucas. And every time I say filthy lucre, I think about his son not having a wash. Yeah. So I wanted to get my season ticket, but there was a 10-year waiting list. And I was like, oh no. And a friend said to me, he said, you can buy a debenture bond. Huh? A debenture bond. I never knew what that was, but I looked into it and I found this debenture bond. Now they were selling them apparently as part of the money raising one of the money raising schemes to pay for the Emirates Stadium. I don't know if you know it. It's the best stadium in England, if not Europe, for football at the Arsenal, which is just by Arsenal Tube Station. Anyone else got their own tube station, or just the mighty Arsenal? I don't know if Spurs have got one. Let me think. No, they've barely got a stadium, have they? But anyway, let's not fight over that. Matt Ford, I know you're listening. Let's not be angry. Bit of banter. So, they tried to raise money a long time ago with these debenture bonds. And so I thought, get hold of one of them. And I found one on all places, eBay. And I couldn't believe it. Debenture bond, it was a few grand, but, no problem. Got millions. Filthy lucre. Clean your son, Neil. Clean your son. And so I got hold of this debenture bond. I bought it. And that means you jump to the front of the queue, almost as if money privileges you in life. So I jumped to the front of the queue, and all the people that had been queuing up for a season ticket for years got shunted back one. And I sort of went, get out of the way, I'm coming through. I got dollars. And so I rung them up. Now, this is where the stupidity starts. I'll tell you why, because I'm involved, yeah, and I'm involved communicating with another human, and that is always problematic. So I ring them up and I say, hi, I got a debenture bond, here's the number, blah, blah. And they said, yes, so do you want to buy yourself a season ticket? And I said, yes, I do. So they give you a link to this digital arena, yeah, it's the Emirates, a digital representation of the Emirates, and you can sort of pick your seat and click on it and it shows you your view. Now, I wanted to treat myself. I didn't want to be somewhere rubbish. I didn't want to be behind something. There's no posts or anything there. It's not like White Hart Lane or any of those stadiums from last century. You got the one before that. It's a very modern stadium. But, I didn't want to be too low, didn't want to be too high. So I picked a lovely, I'll tell you what, a little side story. My friend has got a season ticket, and he goes behind the disabled people. Like, there's a big row of disabled people, and he says one of the highlights of his football match is the disabled people cheering on players. I mean, they're cheering on your Paul Mersons and your Ian Wright this season, so I can imagine that's excellent. But I didn't choose to go there, which I sometimes wish I did, because that would add a certain surreal quality to the match, although it can be fucking weird anyway when Gervinho is on with Gervinho's haircut. So I'm talking to him on the phone, and I pick my seat, and I get a lovely seat on the halfway line. Yeah, about halfway up, about six rows behind the cameras. And it's just perfect. It's just, apart from club level, which is the indoor bit with televisions and free drinks and food and some bloke to tell you which team is Arsenal and the basic rules of the fucking game. I didn't want that. I didn't want club level. I wanted to be among people, a bit of singing, etc., etc. And I ended up making a very good friend. The bloke I sit next to, my friend Sam, he's a good mate of mine now. And so it all worked out nicely, but I tell the bloke what seat I want, and rather weirdly, I mean, in retrospect, it was quite weird of him. He said to me, he said, that's a very expensive seat. Which is a bit weird, isn't it? When you go into a shop and you pick up some shoes or something, they don't go, oh, that's a very expensive pair of shoes. But he said that, and I think that's what kind of put me off a little bit, sort of set me off on a weird mental tangent, because when he said that, I felt weird about having money, because I didn't grow up with money, far from it, you know, we were poor as fuck, really, really rubbish. My mum, when we had, like, tomato soup, she had, like, I'd just be about to tuck in and her arm would come over my shoulder and she'd top it up with milk, and it'd be like, what? Not cream, not like a nice spiral of cream like the adverts, just a little bit of silver top milk, and then she'd stir it and it'd go like this sort of salmony colour, and every time I'd be like, oh man, I'd rather have had less soup than a lot more milky soup, you know? Gross. So I wasn't used to money, and I am now, don't worry about that. Now I am very ostentatious, and I throw money hither and thither without a care in the whither. But I was quite new to it all, and so when he said that, I started lying. And I said to it, and I didn't need to, this is the point. When he said, that's an expensive seat, I can't remember if that's what he said. He said something like, that's in the upper bracket. Yeah, fair enough. I think he said something like, that's in the upper price bracket. But I should have just said, yeah, no problem. But because I wasn't used to those kind of privileges, and the debenture bond was all quite, you know, it felt a bit privileged, and it was, and I wasn't used to it. And, you know, even though I'm used to it now, I'm not necessarily comfortable with it. Obviously, that's not a good thing socially. I should have just said to him, yeah, no worries, but I didn't. I said to him, listen, mate, and I started lying. And when I lie, I step back from myself. And it's always in social situations when I'm under pressure. That's when the bullshit sort of flows forth. I sort of step back from myself, and I'm watching myself, and I'm sort of scratching my head thinking, why are you doing this? Why are you saying this? I should have just said fine. But I didn't, and I said to him, listen, mate, the thing is, my granddad, yeah, God bless his heart, my granddad was a gooner, yeah? So was his father, yeah? And he died last year. And he didn't. My granddad died years ago, drunk, car hit him. He was pissed. He grew up in a pub, owned a pub, worked in a pub, got pissed, walked out, got hit by a car, died. Nothing to do with the Arsenal at all. Didn't like football. He liked parking his Jaguar on the fucking pavement, smoking cigarettes in my mum's toilet, smashed me over the head, going, you swine, and then leaving. Anyway, he didn't need to know this. So I said, my granddad, he was a gooner all his life, you see, and he died last year. And in his will, he said, and I leave Chris £10,000 on the understanding, the legal understanding, that he gets himself a season ticket at the Arsenal, the best seat in the house. Treat yourself, son, treat yourself. I'm getting a bit emotional here, I need some water. Emotional over something that didn't happen. So I said all this to the bloke at the Arsenal, and he said, he went, oh, isn't that nice? That's lovely, that, isn't it? I went, oh, it is. He said, all right then, no worries. I'll process your order. I'll take your card details, and your season ticket will come through the post. And I said, nice one, mate. And so I've done all the payment thing, blah, blah, blah. No problems. About 2 hours later, I get a phone call. Ring, ring. Well, you know, you know how a phone goes. And I pick it up, and they go, hello, this is so-and-so, so-and-so. That wasn't their name. They weren't Cantonese or anything. This is someone from Arsenal Press and Marketing, and we'd really like to do a story about your granddad and the season ticket in the first programme of the new season. And I just thought, oh man. And I said to her, I said, listen, I'll have a little think about that. I'll have a little think about it. And of course, when I put the phone down, I'm like, fucking idiot, you're a fucking idiot. And I asked some friends advice, and of course a lot of my friends are comedians, and they're all saying, you've got to do it. You've got to do it. You've got to go onto Google. You've got to get some old men, and well, don't get some old men, but get some photos of old men and Photoshop some Arsenal scarves on them, and pictures of you as a kid, and go through the whole thing and fabricate an entire story. And I considered it. I did consider it. I thought it might be quite funny, but then imagine it came out, and a lot of people wouldn't understand the comedy value of that. And also there would be explaining the first bit, like I just explained to you. I didn't want to have to sit around the people I was going to be with every season going, yeah, well, 'cause, I just sort of was a bit uncomfortable about spending money on this seat. And I'd have just been like that lying gooner who lied about his granddad and was in the programme. So I just rang him back and went, you know what, we're a very private family. It's a lovely offer, but this time I'm going to say no, okay? And luckily got away with it. It's funny really, isn't it? Because storytelling has always had an element of untruth in it and truth, and the mixture of the two. I mean, when I put a set together, like a big set for like a new hour show or something, like Sex Tourist or even Sex with Children, there's stories are mine, there's stories that are other people's, there are stories that are a bit of mine, a bit of other people's. Some of it's complete fabrication. So a lot of it's improvised, and the improvised stuff can be real, drawing on experiences. It can be unreal, like again, completely made up. And storytelling's always had that quality to it, and I think that's what I like about it. I like that oral tradition of how things and stories are passed on. I think storytelling is really underrated in this culture, and also not recognised. I mean, people don't realise where stories are and what stories are. If you look at our social events, they're essentially storytelling. Music tends to be storytelling. If you look at the big operas, the big historical operas, the requiems, the love stories, these are the things that hold our society together. When you go to the boozer, and that's what it's about, you don't really just chat. It tends to quite quickly move into storytelling. That's certainly where I heard all my stories were in pubs and in parties at home as a kid, when the family would be around and friends of the family, and people exchange stories and they kind of argue over what's real. Like, no, that didn't happen. No, you've got it wrong. It was blah, blah, this happened. Oh yeah, and do you remember this? And people chip in, and it really draws people together, and there's a lot of laughter and there's a lot of tears. And there's a definite social function to storytelling. Stand-up for me is definitely there's an element of that there. I remember when I was at Leeds University, I'd done a master's degree there, and I got right into the Frankfurt School, Theodor Adorno and Walter Benjamin. And Walter Benjamin, he's known for his very famous essay, the work of art in the age of mechanical reproduction, which, obviously still relevant today when we hit that kind of postmodern gunge, that sort of end of history nonsense. Francis Fukuyama trotted out. And, it's kind of weird. When I think of Instagram and how Instagram is robbing us of an aesthetic, it's kind of weird that you take a photo of you or your mates or something, and you get it on Instagram, and you stick an effect on it, and you give it an artificial nostalgia immediately. You got a picture of yourself, and suddenly it's 20 years old, and you look at it, it's like, those were the days, 2 minutes ago. And it's kind of weird. If you look at photos from the 70s, you can immediately tell. You're like, look at them, and like Victorian photos, and they are of their age. They have that historical materialism about them. And then 80s, those kind of like overdeveloped, almost technicolor glow to them. And then suddenly things are aged artificially. And, when you look back on photographs, what the fuck is that? All right, steady on. I'm recording a podcast, don't you know? Thank you. You look back at photographs from this era, and it'll be like, when was that? Is that, I don't know when that is, because the photos have got an aesthetic that we've already put on them. We predetermined, or in the Freudian sense, almost overdetermined the era of the photograph, and it's not necessarily, or hardly, the era that it was taken in. It's kind of strange that. more interesting for me, Walter Benjamin, is his essay, The Storyteller. I think it's in the collection Illuminations. I mean, a fucking sad story, Walter Benjamin, or a fucking sad story, the whole Frankfurt School. I mean, when the Nazis, I was about to say when the Nazis invaded Germany. Well, they kind of did, I suppose. In a way they did, with their propaganda and their bullshit. And their truths. There you go again. The Nazis told the German people a story, and that story had real things and it had artificial things, and put together that can be kind of persuasive. So I'm going to stick with that. When the Nazis invaded the German people's communal consciousness, one of the things that happened was they burnt Theodor Adorno's library of 20,000 books. They just fucking burnt the lot. And a lot of the Jewish intellectuals fled, obviously. And Walter Benjamin, I can't remember exactly where, but he got to one of the borders and he didn't realise that you just had to pay him off. He didn't know that, and he thought he was stuck and that the Nazis were going to get hold of him. And so scared he was of what that might involve that he killed himself. I think he took some poison, and he didn't have to. He could have just paid off these border guards, and obviously he died. But this work, The Storyteller, it's, hang on, something's fallen over. Probably edit this bit out. I said I wouldn't, but I don't know if you need all that. But yeah, in The Storyteller, Benjamin talks about the figure of death and how it is. He says it appears in the figure of death appears in the story with the same frequency as the bell that strikes at noon in the town centre. He talks about rooms. In the past, there was not a room that hadn't been touched by death. And you'd know about it, you'd know that so-and-so died in that room, which says as much as so-and-so lived in that room. Death signals the end of an event, and it signals that event, obviously. And he talked about how houses and homes would have that sense of death. And we don't have that now. We have hygienic, like a cultural hygiene that strips areas of death. My room now in Soho, this must have been here 200 years. The chances are people have died in this room, and yet you don't know about that. There's no record of that. There's no story of that. And it's kind of sad, really, that places are losing that, much like the Instagram thing. There's no time to a place. They become kind of timeless, and not in a positive sense of some kind of eternity about them, but just a kind of historical cleaning up job, It's kind of sad. But I fucking loved that essay, The Storyteller. I'd done my master's degree dissertation, reading it. I read it in terms of writing, and what a time I had in Leeds, man. Jesus. I was up there for 2 years. I had my master's degree in 2 years. And I'll tell you what, I had more violence in Leeds in 2 years than my life up until that point. I was 23 when I got there. Oh, rather young to do a master's degree, I hear you saying. But yes, I just about managed to pull it off. I was out of my head on speed and skunk for the whole time, obviously, and pissed. But, that goes without saying. But yeah, for 2 years, I slept, I think, for a couple of minutes. I wrote a novel, published a novel, Vanity Publishing, but done all right, got some good reviews. I think I've mentioned it before. There's a couple of copies available on Amazon. I think they're about 300 quid. Not because it's very good. In fact, it's utter cack. But because it's very rare, because they only printed 3 copies. And after my one and the review copy, that's the last one that's available. One of the stories in that book, actually, another lie that got me into massive trouble. In Leeds at the time, there was 5 or 6 dole centres. Because there were so many people signing on in the north, probably still is, they had like a dole centre for surnames beginning with A to sort of F, and then G to L. They were all split up. So I was signing on in a few dole centres under different people's names and people who'd gone on holiday. I mean, if anyone from the government or the law is listening, this is presented as a work of fiction. Obviously, I'm making it all up. So I was signing on in a few different dole centres, and I was getting housing benefit for some, and just, income support and incapacity benefit. I had quite a lot of money. It was going all right. I was also selling amphetamines up in Leeds, and with about 60,000 students, that's a lot of speed. And a lot of not anyone turning up to uni on Monday morning. They weren't all at the uni. There was the Metropolitan University, there was a couple of private ones. I think there's one up there called Park Lane or something, but there's a lot of students there. Funny actually, when I first went up there to get my room, I'd gone to the wrong university. I walked into the Metropolitan University, not knowing that there was two. I looked at the walls to find an advert for a room, and I found one, and I went to it, and it was these 4 girls, and I've gone in there with my mate, and they were all right, and I was just looking for a place where I could set up a grow room, and there was a big cellar there, and I thought, this will be a DOS, and I thought I'd sort of test the water with them, and I said to them, do you smoke weed or anything? And she said, one of the girls, they all looked a bit uncomfortable, one of them said, we've got a friend who does on Sunday. I thought, yeah, you're not going to take to a 20 lamp hydroponic setup in the basement too well. And then luckily found out I was in the wrong university building and went to another one and did set my garden up. How the garden grows. Anyway. So I'm signing on all these names, and I had this old friend from Belgium. When I was 18, I took a cycling holiday to Belgium. Well, not necessarily Belgium. I went to Holland and France and then Belgium, but I met this lovely girl, Carol, in Belgium. I was juggling, me and a mate we were juggling to pay our way, busking essentially. And we got 6 weeks out of it. We left England with 30 quid. We spent that on Southern Comfort on the ferry, puked most of it over the side, and arrived in Vlissingen in Holland with about a quid. And we just started juggling, and we got a 6-week holiday out of it. It was amazing. So this lovely girl, Carol, when I left, I kind of sort of broke my 18-year-old heart, and it was all kind of romantic, but, soon forgot about her, as you do. And then years later, when I was on my master's degree, she contacted me. I don't know how she found me. This is pre-internet. Well, certainly pre-everyone having the internet. Maybe it was existing somewhere, but I certainly didn't have it. I was writing essays on a fucking electronic typewriter. But Carol got hold of me and she gave me her phone number, and I wrote it down on this bit of paper. But it turned out the bit of paper was a form for the job centre for one of the fake names I was signing on in. And weirdly, the name was John Smith. I mean, he actually exists, this bloke, John Smith, and he knocked me in the end for a few grand. I hate the cunt. If I find him, I will certainly be removing that money from his bank account with force. But I was getting his money. I gave him a one-off payment when he fucked off to Sweden, and I was just signing on in his name. So I wanted to go down to one of the dole centres and say, look, I handed in a form to you, and I've written a phone number down on the back of it. Can I just have that form back so I can get the number? And it was weird, really. I shouldn't have done it, because this is before all job smart and fuck work and slave labour that they do now. You literally just went and signed your name every fortnight and got your free money. So it was a bit weird. Essentially, I'd gone off-piste. Yeah, I'd gone down and the pattern had changed. It wasn't just signing my name. I was asking for a form back. And I no doubt, I should have known that it was going to end badly. So me and my mate Isles, we were sitting at home. We'd done a few bongs, smoked a couple of blunts. Bam, 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 here we go. Out of our heads, we've driven down there all over the place, about 10 o'clock in the morning. And I walked in and I sat there. Now, it was a weird one because there was like a supervisor behind the jump as well as the two normal people. So I kind of got the impression there was some kind of, I don't know what, where they watch the workers and fuck them over later. You didn't do this, you didn't in it. Which it didn't look good, So anyway, I said to him, hi, I handed in a form and I wrote a phone number on the back of it. I was wondering if I could just look at the form, please, Mr. Sir, please, can I? And he went, yeah, no worries, what's your name? And I said, John Smith. And then he said, okay, what's your middle name? And I didn't know. Now, it's kind of weird because how do you not know your middle name? There's no getting away from this. I'm in trouble. The supervisor's clocked me because my face has gone funny. Well, it's funny anyway, but it obviously looked slightly panicked. And so I just went for it. I just went for it and I just went, Richard? And it was. And he went, okay, date of birth? No idea. Not a clue. I mean, the geezer was, I don't know, I was like, I say, 23, 24 at the time. He was mate, he was anywhere between 25 and 35. And what month and day I just don't know. So I said to him, and I knew this was nonsense, but I had to say something because otherwise we were just sitting there in silence. So I said, I don't know. And he laughed. The bloke laughed. He just went, what? And he asked me the most peculiar question. He said to me, almost cutting me some slack, he said to me, how did you know when you first signed on with us? And I said, I just said to him, and I'm panicking now because I realise on this account, not only am I getting dole, but I'm also getting housing benefit. I apologise for the ambience. It got a bit loud there. I'm going to have to continue. He said, how did you know your date of birth when you first signed on with us? And I pointed over my shoulder and I said, I've got it written down in the car. He went, what? And at this point, the supervisor has pressed a button under the desk. Now, to this day, I don't know whether I'm just being paranoid, but that to me was something like security required. And I got up and I ran to the fucking doors. And as I ran, someone shouted out, security! And I didn't smash him. I like to imagine it was like Blade Runner. You know that bit where she's running through paned glass and it's all smashing as old Harrison Ford fills her with lead. But it wasn't. I just sort of opened them and fucked that up and nearly walked into the side of the door. Run out and I'm running towards my mate Isles' car and I'm going, stop the car! Stop the car! And he's ring. And a couple of security have come out behind me and I've got in the car, shut the door, and he's in there, he's got a joint on the go and he's looking at me, he's going, you look like you're a bit upset. And I'm just going, drive! And we sped off. Now the problem was, not only did that mean I was losing John Smith's dole every week, which was, 40, 50 quid, which was quite handy, but also I was getting housing benefit on that account. And I had this Japanese bloke living in a room that I was subletting to him on the back of this fucking thing. So I've had to go round his house and I've knocked on the door. He's gone, hello! I went, you got to get out, mate. And he was like, what? And he didn't know. He thought I was the proper landlord. And he was like, what do you mean? I don't want to leave. It's my flat. And I said, no, you got to go, man. And me and Isles, we threw all his stuff into a sheet and tied it up and threw it out the window. Never saw him again. Never heard anything about that dole thing because obviously I didn't give him a real address or anything. There was quite another quite a good dole story. One of the others I was signing on for, they've sent me a letter once and they said, can you come down? We need to talk to you about something. So I'm sort of panicking, but I thought it'd be alright because I had his ID and everything and we'd cropped a photo in and it was all quite kosher, this one. Hang on, bit of water. I've gone down there and they said, okay, Mr. Williams, we haven't paid your dole in 5 months. And I went, right. And they said, and you seem to have not noticed. And I just said to them, well, I did notice actually, but I've been so frightened that you were going to cut it off forever. And I managed to blag it, and in the end they give me a lump sum back. Thank you very much, HM Gov and Rev. Okay, let's have a look at some of the questions. Ollie Raisin asks, why do you live in Soho? Well, I'll tell you for why, Ollie, because I came up to Soho when I was 10 years old to buy magic tricks from Davenport's, which is under Charing Cross Underground, and I accidentally strolled into, I'd heard of Covent Garden, so I went there, and I accidentally strolled into Soho, and in those days there was neon signs everywhere for girls, and there was people with amazing outfits on, and it had a vibe I've never known. I mean, for a young lad from Dartford, it was another world. And then when I came here after my master's degree and I was writing screenplays and I was selling narcotics and having the time of my life, I fell in love with the place when I was 11. That love was reignited in my early 20s. So when I finally came into a shitload of money, I got myself a pad here and I absolutely love it. And I can't see myself leaving too soon. Peter Cope asks, why am I a cunt? Okay, Ollie Raisin, again, little bit eager, mate. Calm down. What's the worst thing you've ever seen? Well, I'll keep it brief. Maybe it's a story for a podcast, but it involves someone putting fairy liquid on their hand to put their hand up the arse of a dead girl to pull out the drugs. More later. Bradley Walsh asks, how about trying to discern the difference between fact and fiction on the internet? Because apparently all you need is a picture and some words attached to it for people to take it as gospel. Well, Bradley Walsh, what I will say is I don't think that necessarily is a thing that is exclusive to the internet. I mean, words and pictures have told truths and lies since history began. History essentially is the combination of images and words to tell stories. We go back to what I said originally. I've just made up a word. It doesn't mean anything though, so I'm going to stick with originally. I don't think technology necessarily has made that a thing, because that's existed. I mean, the cave paintings really were telling a truth and were telling a lie. How do we tell the difference? Well, I suppose we have to look towards evidence, and we have to look towards some kind of way of confirming this information through experience and through testing. It's kind of like the science of reading, perhaps. Okay, we have some more. Francis O'Grady says, may I suggest, Chris Dangerfield, that this last comment be the highlight topic of your show? I don't know what the last... I fuck knows, I fucked that up. Don't care. Pete Cope has asked for something else. At the same time... Oh, what is this, man? I don't know what they're talking about. Shawnee Rutledge says, why are there so many comedian podcasts? Well, Shawnee Rutledge, if you can't work that out, you're probably having trouble doing up your shoelaces. Okay, Neil Wetherill asks, Ian Beale or Pat Butcher? It's an odd question, isn't it? It's kind of, there's a spurious relationship with reality there. He's not saying when, he's not saying where. There's problems with predicates, with verbs, with subjects, all sorts of things. Ian Beale or Pat Butcher? If I have to choose, it's going to be Beale every time. Every time it's Beale. Except, of course, when it's Pat Butcher. Benjamin Krellin. Good old Ben. Great comic Ben. I'm doing a gig with him at the what's it, that one out in the Comedy Cafe out in Shoreditch. Soon, I'll let you know about that. Come along, actually. Ben's great. I'm better, of course, but he's also great. Dear Mr. Dangerfield, what are your feelings on transhumanism? Could you foresee yourself becoming augmented into a cyborg? Are we pushing technology too far in its engagement with the human body, or not far enough? Is it possible to cross a line of man into a place of machine? Your loyal listener, Benjamin Krellin. Well, weirdly, Ben, I think it's interesting because I think what has happened here, culture has posited the idea of a cyborg as some kind of humanoid with robotic and electronic parts incorporated into the body and mind. And I think they do that for a reason. It's the, what do you call it? Oh man, what's it called when they give you a small bit of the disease, so that you don't get the full disease? Oh man, I can't remember. This is going awfully. Am I going to edit this bit out? No, I'm not. I'm going to remember what it's called. I'm going to give myself 5 seconds. It's called an inoculation. There you go. I got it. Roland Barthes talks about it in Mythologies, the inoculation, where we know what an inoculation is. They give you a little bit of the disease to protect you against the whole thing. And Roland Barthes says, in the cultural sense, an inoculation is a small amount of acknowledged evil, which allows a bigger, more dangerous, more insipid evil to carry on without us realizing. And I think that idea of the cyborg in the traditional sense, weird that a cyborg has become traditional, but with electronics built into our mind and body, it's making us forget that actually we are already cyborgs. You know, with our Facebooks and our Twitter and our mobiles and our computers, we are already integrated into the machine. We have prosthetics everywhere. You know, we have prosthetic memories that we keep. You know, and they exist outside of us. We don't actually need to have metal arms and like an eye like Arnold Schwarzenegger in Terminator to be incorporated into the machine. I think we are already cybernetic humans. And can you push it too far? Only if you stipulate a criteria. And I don't think that would be healthy. I think technology should be allowed to run its course as long as we know what its applications are and how that's affecting our culture as a whole. Okay, I think we may well be done with the questions there. Is there any more? Let's have a look. Nope, that's it. A massive pause at the end there. I hope you've enjoyed the prescription this Sunday. It's been a ramble. It's been full of energy. I've enjoyed it. I hope you've enjoyed it. Love yourself. Love the people around you. Enjoy your life. You're a long time dead. And if you ain't living, you're dying. See you later, yeah? Much later.